Welcome to 2 Minute Tuesday, and today we're going to review the new Old Fitzgerald 7-year bottle and bond. This is supposed to be a relatively shelf-stable product, but I think kind of like Traveler Whiskey, for those of us who remember that release, and a number of other releases that have happened, we're going to see it be a little difficult at first. The first thing I think of is like the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass series, and then over time, they're going to become more and more shelf available. For right now, these have been commanding quite the clamor, but the real question is, how good is it, and is it worth keeping on your shelf? So, today we're going with the Old Fitz. I don't have any of the big fancy decanters. The only way that I've ever had them is through samples, but I am a big fan of wheated whiskeys, as should be obvious, including wheat whiskeys, as we saw last week when I did the Star Hill Farms. But I do have what is effectively Old Fitzgerald juice in the Rebel Small Batch Reserve and the Rebel 10-year. So I am kind of familiar, and I've tried a number of the different decanters through friends and some bars, so I'm pretty familiar with the Old Fitzgerald profile. So with that being said, let's get this bad boy open, get to tasting. Can I talk about how much I love this bottle, by the way? I just want to get in here. I love that they kept the kind of decanter fluting on the top of the bottle, but the fact that it isn't the giant base, and I know people will be like, I wish it was just the decanter bottle. I actually like this more because it fits on a shelf with a bunch of other things way better than the actual decanter bottles do. It's kind of like Birthday Bourbon and 13th Colony, where those like big wide bottom bottles just like don't fit on a shelf all that well with a bunch of other whiskey. So for those of us who probably own too much, they can be a little bit of a bear. And this bottle is actually pretty sweet. Cork pop time. Not bad. All right, we're going to let this get rested after a pour, and then we'll get into the notes. So for 7 years and 100 proof, you can see we've got kind of a more amberish, not quite as deep in the color as some of the other bourbons we've had recently, but still decent color. We're not talking like the fluorescent yellow kind of stuff that you see really young product. Viscosity-wise, I don't know how well you can see that, but there is some good legs considering it's only 100 proof. Let's get on the nose. It's definitely Old Fitzgerald. There's a bit of nuttiness coming off the nose, which I really like. There's also a teeny tiny pinch of like kind of citrus, and I would say more that orange peely style citrus. Not a ton of weak funk. It's also not super sugary and sweet on the nose. It's a bit more of that nutty profile with that little bit of citrus and definitely a little bit of the oak influence in there. But I would say at 7 years, you're not expecting like a super crazy nose. Let's get on the palate. The first thing I get right away, that orange peel citrus note is bam, in my face. It's like the first thing I taste. There's not much wheat funk. Several of the previous Old Fitzgeralds I've tried have had a reasonable amount of wheat funk presence to them. It also doesn't have very much that perfumey thing that some wheaters will get. There's definitely a little sugariness to it. It's very kind of brown sugar underneath that big orange peel citrus note. Lightly candied orange thing going on. And then you start getting into a nice little bit of caramel. That nutty note does start showing up. Kind of like if you've ever had something that is made with a little bit of almond flour as well as something else in a baked good. You get that subtle kind of almondy note, and that's kind of what I'm getting here in this. The really upfront on my palate, big citrus, a little bit of sweet, kind of underlying that, and then you get into a touch of that kind of nuttiness and a little bit of the wheat funk, but it's so subtle. So the more that I taste this, the thing that I'm starting to finally get in this, other than that big citrus and sugar note up front, cotlet. It's a little tiny amount of like dried apricot candy in there. There's a kind of cinnamony spice finish that's got just a touch of like honey to it. So with that being said, let's get into an overall score. I'm going to give this a 65. I actually think this is pretty decent, given that it's only a 7-year product. It's at 100 proof. It's supposed to be shelf stable. Now, initially, this is going to be very hard to find, and they are doing batches, which you can tell when you look at up here on the neck. You'll see like, oh, it was done in the spring of this, right? So that's kind of cool, very similar to the actual full-on decanters. It tells you when it was distilled. So if you wanted to go through and collect a bunch of different batches and see if there's any changes over time, you can, which I find kind of interesting and appealing. It gives kind of a reason to hunt like new batches and stuff like that, if you were to ask me. But is this like a Weller 107 killer, or is this even better than the Bardstown Origin High Wheat? And in that regard, I'm going to say no. No, it's not. I think it's pretty good whiskey, especially if you account for the fact that the end goal is that this should be shelf stable at a little around like $50-ish before tax for the bottle. I paid $51.99 plus my taxes for mine, and if that's the normal price, I think this is something that's worth having on your shelf because it is a significantly different profile than, say, like the Weller or even the Bardstown Bourbon. But I don't think it's quite as good as the Bardstown was. I don't think it's nearly as complex, and considering they're pretty similar in price, but you're getting higher proof out of the Bardstown High Wheat Origin series, I would probably be more likely to reach for the Origin as a sipper than I would for the Old Fitzgerald, even if it does have a really cool looking bottle. I'm digging this. Overall, this is pretty sweet. It's not the most complex thing in the world, but you do get a number of pretty solid notes, considering this is only a bottle and bond, so aka 100 proof and a 7-year product. There's a decent amount of complexity here. And if you're getting it at MSRP, that's pretty good, right? I think for a shelf-stable product, very similar to the Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond, this is kind of the weeded version accompaniment, you're getting a pretty solid shelf bourbon with a really, really cool bottle. That is giving you some good flavor, but I don't know that it's going to punch to the level of some of the others that we have tried recently. Is it the OWA killer? No, it's not killing Weller Antique. Weller 107 is just such a phenomenal pour, and if you're lucky enough to find Weller 107 at its MSRP, which is so close to the MSRP on this, I don't feel like it's possible for Weller 107 to lose in that fight. I know there's a lot of people on the internet saying all sorts of stuff. Everybody's palate's subjective, right? But for me, there is no way that this, and even the Bardstown, is beating a Weller 107. But granted, it's difficult for me to find Weller 107, so I end up having to pay like secondary to get mine. That being said, what are your thoughts? Have you had an opportunity to try the Old Fitz 7-year? Has it not shown up? I mean, it took forever to come to Washington, and I know some states still haven't seen it. I'm glad that we finally have, because now I have one, I get to enjoy it, I get to have it as a part of my selection, and I get to take it to bottle shares and let other people try it, and gives out samples and things like that. Because I firmly believe that you should be able to try whiskeys before you buy them so that you don't regret them. I try my best with a lot of my friends, or even some of the places I go, to try things before I buy them, but it's not always the case, and sometimes I'm going off of blind faith that certain things are done well, or that certain people who have palates pretty similar to mine that have tried it have a similar experience to the experience that I'm going to have. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment down below. Let me know, what's your favorite weeded bourbon? Is it the new Old Fitz? Is it Weller Special Reserve? Is it the Penelope weeded? Maybe the Bardstown? Old Elk? Maybe you're coming over this route? Maybe you're a Maker's fan? Whatever it may be, I want to hear from you in the comments down below. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, because once we hit 500 subscribers, we're going to do a number of sample flights as a giveaway, and when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give away this E.H. Taylor single barrel, among a few other things. But we'll announce that when we get there. For now, I really hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you get to find one of these too. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.